Welcome to another episode. What are you reading? What are you writing? A weekly video podcast features creatives, writers, and readers when we come together to talk about books. I am your host, Karen E. Osborne, author of 4 novels and counting. I am so glad you're here. I think you're going to enjoy our next guest. You guys know how much I love it when my two worlds come together. My whole nonprofit, fundraising, management, leadership world, and then my writing world. And my guest today brings those two together. Hey, Paul, this is Paul S. Boynton. Hey,
Hey,
Paul.
it's great to be here. Thank you.
Oh, I'm so glad. We had a couple of times we wanted to get together and then we didn't. So
That's
I'm
true.
just so glad that we have found the time because I want everybody to get to know you and get to know your books. So, Paul is the author of the wildly popular Begin with Yes. And then he has another one, Be Amazing, with a subtitle Discover Your Purpose, Conquer Your Fears, and Fulfill Your Potential. That sounds pretty inspiring. And he has a new one out that's out called Remember Courage, Comfort, and Hope. So these all sound wonderful. And we could talk about all of them. We could talk about so many other things. Let's get started. So I read that is this true? I read that you have 2 million followers on your Facebook page for Begin with Yes. Is that
Yes, that is
true?
true. It is true. It's up to 2.2 million, so it continues to grow.
Wow.
So,
So let's start there. I mean, I'm
all
super
right.
impressed. So let's start with Begin with Yes. And was that your very first? Because you published a lot of books. Was that one of your first big
It, it,
successes?
it, that was my very first book, and I started really writing books pretty late in life. I was a CEO of a nonprofit in New Hampshire that served people with intellectual disabilities and brain injuries, and then elderly people. It was the whole focus of that work was keeping people in their community and out of institutional programs. And I was doing a lot of public speaking, and I had this. My speeches tended to be different than other people's speeches in that I talked about personal things and I talked about my own experience and what was important to me. And at some point, I realized that there was enough content in like this series of speeches that I might turn it into a book. And I had a really close friend, he's still a close friend of mine, who wrote a Broadway musical called Brooklyn the Musical. And he was somebody that was homeless at one point in his life in New Hampshire, did not know how to read music, but he did write this musical and did get it to Broadway it was on Broadway for, I think, 10 months, which is pretty remarkable. And I was having lunch with him and I had this concept and I just ran it by him because he was a great marketer. And I said, I'm thinking of writing a book called Begin with Yes. And that really resonated with him. And so the fact that it resonated with him sort of encouraged me and motivated me to take that concept and begin writing about it. And I had a favorite book, which you might remember. It was from the 70s. It was called How to Be Your Own Best Friend. And it was
Yeah.
written by a couple of psychiatrists from New York. And it was a huge bestseller for many, many years. And it's still available. But it was a very short, simple book. And it was a conversation with these two psychiatrists about self esteem primarily. And I liked that formula. And so I decided that that would be how I would write Begin with Yes. And that formula actually made the writing, because you write fiction, and I would love to be interviewing you and picking your brain about that. But um, it sort of made writing the book sort of happen almost naturally. So I would say something, and then a question would occur to me, and I would ask the question, and then I would write the answer. And so it was very much like having a conversation. Like I guess it was an internal conversation, but I was imagining how people might react to what I just said.
Yeah, so tell
Um,
us what's the premise of the book? I mean, what is it? What does the begin with yes mean? What will I get
yeah,
out of it?
I've always been sort of have this sense of optimism, and I was had this sort of optimistic spirit, and so that's part of my nature, um, to look on the bright side of things. And so the concept of begin with yes, initially I thought yes, which was the optimism piece of my writing, was the most important word, but I eventually learned that the begin piece was just as important and maybe more important. And there were another book that was sort of hovering around in the background was called The Secret, and it was about manifesting. That was another hugely popular book, probably 10 years ago, um, that was teaching people that you could manifest things happening in your life by acting as if they had already happened.
Mm,
And that seemed kind of empty to me in a way. No sort of harm intended by that comment, but it felt like you couldn't just wish it. You couldn't just think about it as if it just happened. You have to actually do something.
gotta do
Uh,
something. Yes.
right. And so then the word begin became more sort of powerful or equally powerful. So those two words, be optimistic and have hope for something and have a intention for something to happen, but then recognize that you have a responsibility to do something about that. So lots of people want to, for example, lots of people would love to write a book, right? I mean,
Mhm.
everyone feels like they have a book in them, but mostly people just talk about wanting to write a book.
Yeah.
And I always say to them, write that first sentence and then stop saying, I want to write a book and start saying, I am writing a book. I am
I am
doing.
writing a book.
Right.
Yeah.
And so,
Yeah, that's so important, Paul, because for example, just staying with the book example, only like 2 or 3% of people who start books even finish them.
yep,
So we not only have to begin, but we've got to be able, as you say, to see that future, see that end, and then find a path for getting there. So that applies to everything in life,
it
doesn't it?
does. It's like I think that's why it's such a powerful concept. It's so simple, and it's not rocket science. It's just a powerful thought. And you make a very good point, is that you have to keep going. And another part of the begin with yes sort of mantra or story is taking small steps. And so if you think of, like, if you're writing a book, it may be getting another paragraph done today,
Yes.
but the paragraphs add up. And all of a sudden, you've got enough paragraphs that you've got a draft of a chapter.
Got a book.
And so it's inch by inch, life's a cinch, right? It's sort of like, and that again applies to everything, every goal that you have. So many people, like, they want to lose weight, they want to go back to college, they want to be a nurse, they want to change careers. I mean, whatever it is that you want, and this is what I feel like I'm always encouraging people. You need to begin. It's sort of like you can't stay in this place where you're wishing. You have to move to a place where you're doing.
What you're doing.
And
Yes,
that's where then life gets exciting and that's fun.
it
And
is.
doing it is why we're here, right?
Yes, and we have to keep doing it.
Absolutely. Right.
Keep doing it. I've shared with my audience before that my son is also an author, and he writes 15 minutes a day. He makes a promise to himself
Yep.
that he'll write at least 15 minutes a day. And next thing you know, those 15 minutes, as you say, they add up in here. He's a published author. Every year he gets short stories published in literary magazines, just doing that 15 minutes a day. I think so many of us, whatever it is, whatever the goal is, where I'm going to sit down and I'm just going to do it. I'm going to get the whole thing done, and it just isn't realistic.
It
Yeah,
isn't.
we've got each of the steps. So you have other books that have also been very popular. Be Amazing. That sounds so cool. I just love that title. Be amazing. Discover your purpose, conquer your fears, and fulfill your potential. So how is that book different from
It's
Begin with Yes? Or
yeah,
what's in
it's
there?
sort of it feels like it's all part of like sort of a journey. And Begin with Yes was the beginning of the journey for me, and Be Amazing was something that happened down the road a little bit further. It's interesting, and people listening might be interested to know that the reason I got a publisher for Be Amazing was because I had 2 million fans on my Facebook page. So it wasn't necessarily that they thought I was a gifted writer. They just thought I had this
Good market.
yeah, it was good for marketing. And so I had a friend who he ghost writes. I'm not sure that that's the right word because he gets writing credit as co-author of books.
Mm.
And he had a really good agent in New York City that he introduced me to, and then that's what got me in the door. So it's like you never know what you're doing now, how that's going to impact um,
Yeah,
what happens down the road. So
it's
it's like
true.
I started to begin with Yes Facebook page, not having written a book. I had like maybe 3 people other than family members who had signed on to my Begin with Yes page. And I just started writing short little motivational thoughts that occurred to me. It was all original content. Um, and then it just, while I was writing the book, the page sort of grew, and those two things sort of supported each other.
Yeah.
And I love what you said about the 15 minutes a day, because really that's sort of like one of the secrets I think that's so powerful in this concept is you don't have to write the book today. You just have to take a small step, do a little bit. And we're also busy. And I'm retired now, but I'm busier now than I've ever been. And
Hmm.
it's like I really don't have time to do lots of things that I want to do, but I have to say, well, what's important? What's the most important thing for me? And you have to make time. And you know, I tell people, and I know, like that life is full and complicated, uh, and there's lots of things that work against us making our dreams come true.
Yes.
Bills, taking care of our parents, taking care of our kids, dealing with the cable that's not working, right? There's a million things that get in our way, and we just have to say, if this is really important to me, then I'm going to find 15 minutes. And if you can't find 15 minutes, find 10 minutes. And if
Exactly.
you have to lock yourself in the bathroom to have 10 minutes to yourself, do that. But
Do that.
it's you've got to prioritize your dreams, because if you don't, you're going to find that they're going to stay a dream. And what I want for people is for their dreams to become their realities, and I believe that it's possible, um, in some
It
form,
is.
that your dream can become a reality.
You know what I loved about your title too, though? Because it's not just about dreams, it's about purpose.
Yes.
And I see the difference of people who find purpose and people who don't. And people who find purpose, they have an outside of themselves
Yes.
life, right? And
Yes.
people who don't, they just have an internal life. They just have
Yes.
a me life.
Right.
And so this purpose thing, and it carries you, it can change, right? Your purpose can change.
You have more than one purpose too.
And you can have more than one purpose, but
Right.
you need purpose. You
Yes, you
need
do.
purpose.
That's
Yeah.
where the energy comes from, I think, behind
Oh,
a dream. So a dream that's not in some way tied to a purpose is probably not going to manifest itself. It's not going to
mm,
happen, and that's okay. Um,
mm.
but if you can find the purpose, and have that tied to your dream, then things begin to
And then
move
you give
forward.
the 10 minutes or 15 minutes
Absolutely.
and it get started.
Right.
Then that's right.
Absolutely.
So you've got a new, well, first of all, show us the covers of the other books. Do you have the other books with you?
Yeah, I mean, yeah, and
Let's show our audience.
what I wanted to say about Be Amazing, because you
Oh,
asked
look at
about
that.
that, and it's again, it's like it feels to me in many ways it's like what I'm writing about is kind of common sense, but the sort of basic theory behind be amazing is if you first decide what you want to be amazing at, whether
Mhm.
it's an amazing grandfather or an amazing teacher or amazing fundraiser or amazing fundraiser or amazing writer, um, then you say to yourself, well, what would an amazing fundraiser look like? What does that actually mean? And we almost never do that, where we drill down and understand what an amazing fundraiser would look like. And once you've done that, then you have your target, your goal. You understand what it takes to be amazing, and then you start working on those areas. It's like in the book "Be Amazing," I write about an amazing Uber driver that I met, and he I don't think he thought it through the way I'm talking about it now, but he had figured out what an amazing Uber drive would be. He would have a clean car, he would be friendly and he would smile. He would have a bottle of water. He would have hard candies in the back. He would have things that he could talk about for people that are visiting his city. And so he had all those things, and he was an amazing Uber driver, and he loved his work. And he
Mhm.
found joy in his work. And so it doesn't, so the principles that I talk about in my book, Be Amazing, apply to anything and everything. And so
Everything.
I teach people, it's like, and I know we're probably running out of time already, but what kicked that into gear was going to a restaurant, a breakfast spot in state of Washington, um, and having an amazing breakfast experience. And then I realized breakfast is my favorite meal of the day.
Mine too.
Uh, and so I realized that there are so many breakfast places that are okay or pretty good, but there aren't many that are amazing. And this
Mm.
place was amazing. And so they had figured out, they had not by because they read my book, but they intuitively knew that they must have at some point said, what does it take to be amazing? Um, and they nailed it. They were friendly. You had to wait an hour to get in there, but they came out and kept telling you, the wait's getting shorter. Wait, we haven't forgotten you. And then when we sat down, they brought us a free apple pancake for the table to share. There were 10 of us that morning. And they were smiling and they were pouring coffee. And then we said, oh, instead of sausage, can I have bacon? And they said, sure, you can have whatever you want. And so all these things added up. And then the food was delicious on top of it. And I really began wondering, why doesn't everyone want to be amazing at what they're doing?
Yeah.
Why do you settle for being an okay
Okay.
CEO or an okay nurse or an okay teacher? Why not be an amazing all of those things?
But I think you touched on some of that. I love this. I love this. So, for one thing, people often want to be successful as opposed to be amazing,
Yes,
right?
that's
I mean,
brilliant.
that's
Yes,
such a different mindset. I just want to
yes,
be successful. But if I want it to be amazing, I will be successful,
right.
right?
And
So I think that's so important. And then actually thinking about what does it take?
yes,
Looking and seeing whatever you are, find people who are amazing at what it is you want.
absolutely. Yes.
This is
And it
so good,
doesn't,
but I don't run out of time and not talk about your other books. So you have one more, you have a new one, right?
yes,
Called Remember,
yes.
Courage, Comfort, and Hope. Do you have that one?
Yeah, I do.
Let's show the audience. Oh, that's a great cover.
It really is a nice cover. And I really liked it. Brooke Shields wrote a comment for it. She said, we are more resilient than we might think. And remember, a little book of courage, comfort, and hope helps us uncover our strength and power and our ability to push through challenging times. And she's an interesting person who's had many challenging times herself. And
Since a young girl.
yeah, she really did. And so, um, that the fact that this sort of resonated with her
Yeah.
is meant a lot to me. And it's again, my books are not they're simple. They come from my heart. Um, and I share my own struggles, my own journey, and it recognizes everything. I try to write everything um, in a way that's grounded in reality because I know people have difficult lives. We
Yeah.
all do. Some
Hmm.
more difficult than others, but we all have
And different
challenges.
times of your life, right?
Absolutely. And you often hear that you don't really know what people are dealing with always,
Yes.
and so so I think there's probably no one listening to this right now that cannot identify a challenging time in their own life, either
Yeah,
that's happening right now, and they come and go, don't they?
they
It's sort of like,
do.
um, and we're
So
not
that sounds like
insulated.
a book that people could just take off the shelf at different
Yes,
times in their life, as
yes,
opposed to a sit down and read it and then you're done. It sounds like it's
yep.
a you go back
He,
to it
right.
for that.
It's like I think that's true of all my. You're very perceptive. That's true of all my books. I think that people do pick them up and put them down, and they're shorter rather than longer. You could get on a plane in New Hampshire and fly to the West Coast and read Begin with Yes on the plane, and be done with it. It's a short book, but then you would want to go back and read
Go back.
sections
Kind of
again.
books that I write notes in.
Yes. Yep.
You know, I have books that I've had for, just so many years, and I go back and I see the notes that I wrote in it because it hit me in a certain
I,
way. And yeah, that sounds wonderful. Oh my goodness. You and I could talk for another hour, but we're not allowed to. So two things as we wrap up. One is there a book that you've read recently that you could recommend to this audience?
sure.
Something that, besides your wonderful books, we want you to buy all of his wonderful books. But besides that, what else might you recommend?
I've just picked up. I ordered a copy for a friend, and then I ordered a copy for myself. But it's an old book. It's called How to Be Your Own Best Friend, and it was
Hmm.
written by a couple of psychiatrists in New York. In this book was written in the '70s, but it was a huge bestseller, and it's still in print, and it's still very relevant and very. It's and I actually copied their format, the Q&A. Um, because that's the format of this book. It's a beautiful, simple little book that you can pick up, and honestly, you could read the whole book in an hour and a half or 2 hours. But it's full of little, sort of very simple but profound thoughts about sense of self and how we treat
Self-affirming.
ourselves. Yeah, it really
Yeah. Oh, that
is.
that sounds that sounds
It's a
wonderful.
sweet little book.
Yeah. And you just started a new Substack, right? You started a
Yes, I
new.
love Substack. It's a forum, online forum for writers, really, to connect with people that like their writing, and people can subscribe to your page for free, or they can pay a small amount a month. And some people choose to give all of their content um, free, which is what I do. So you don't have to pay anything to get all of my content. Everything that's up there is free. Um, but if you want to support my work, you can. Like $6 a month or $8 a month. I forget exactly what it is. And but that reminds me, both remember and begin with yes on my website for free. So people that can't afford to purchase the books right now, they can download them for free. And you just go to my beginwithyes.com and download the book for free. And my purpose is to get this information into the hands of people who want it.
I
And
need it.
need it. So that's just, and so if you can't afford it or don't want to spend the money right now, that you can download it for free on my website, and I would offer that with an open.
Yeah. And you can also find it on Amazon and pay for it
Yes,
if they wanted
right.
to. Yes.
Yes,
And so
that's
the way
true.
they can find you is beginwithyes.com,
Yep.
and that's your website.
Yep, and that's how they can find me on Substack, and that's how they can find me on Begin with Yes and Instagram. And I'm going to start doing some stuff on TikTok if they stick around. I'm not sure if
Mm.
they're going
We'll
to, but
see how that
yeah,
goes.
yeah, definitely. But I'm trying to just take advantage of all the opportunities that are out there, and keep
Yeah.
moving.
This sounds wonderful. Really, truly, I could talk to you for another hour, but we have
I
to
know.
let these good people go. I
All right.
promise I'm always that it's about 20 minutes, so I don't want to hold them longer than they want to be held. But you
Awesome.
can find Paul, you can be in touch with him. And I hope that you will. I hope that you will go to his website. I hope you'll go to his Facebook page. I hope you will go to Amazon and find him. And
Okay.
when you do, please tell him that you met him on What Are You Reading? What Are You Writing? Until next week, everybody, have a great week. And thanks so much for being with us. And thank you, Paul.
It's beautiful.